Hello, this is Will. I'm a real werewolf. Please like and subscribe this channel if you would, or video or whatever. I've been asked to stop swearing by Louis, so as a favour, I'm going to stop swearing in this bit.
Hello again. My name is Will the Werewolf, and I am speaking to you on this cold, freezing December day about my kind of philosophy on life, how you humans are fucked up, and in your beliefs, and how fucking much nonsense it is. These are a number of separate little interviews that Louis didn't want me to do about my philosophy. He didn't really fancy me doing these, but I think a real werewolf, a real monster, needs to tell you why you're a bunch of nuggets. You're just a waste of space, you're a plague, and you have to go. You sit there and you talk about your bloody morals and, your laws and rules and your humanitarian bollocks, and it just really pisses me off because you've just been murderers and killers and horrific things all your entire lives. So this is number 4, I think, in these philosophical ones, so I've been told that, so you can ignore it if you want it. If you like it on the video, please. If you are on the YouTube channel, please subscribe to us. That would do us a favour. We also want this information out there. As I say, I've done this at massive risk to myself. I am not sure that I will see out the next few weeks, to be honest. I am having to get out of this country fairly rapidly, and I'm going to try and get away for a bit. Hopefully back on the 16th of January, Louis booked a studio and 3 well-known skeptics to watch me transform, as well as a studio audience. So he's going to feed me at the same time, which is fantastic. I know, I'm only joking. Yeah, so this is number 4 in those philosophy things. It's called Why I Really, 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 Really Hate You Fucking Humans. And it's about the time that you started farming. I mean, up to now you'd been just hunter gatherers, and it was fine-ish because there wasn't many of you, but once you started farming, oh, for fuck's sake. Anyway, I'm going to get on with it. So now, you only got worse when you became farmers. Up to now, you'd bimbled around the countryside, hunting and gathering and staying in small tribes. At this point, this way of collecting food and living was enough to support your needs. About 10,000 years ago, they think, although that seems to be changing with different ideas, you took a significant step backwards and started to manipulate the lives of animals and plants to suit your own needs. You went from happy hunters to miserable busy farmers, and really there is little evidence as to why. It is all thought to have started in the southeast of Turkey. The first things thought to be domesticated by man were wheat and goats. Between 10,000 years BC and 3.5 thousand years BC, most of the plants and animals that we see domesticated in our modern farms became domesticated. This was a very large development in a very short amount of time. Here I note a very frightening statistic. 90% of the calories we consume in our modern times are from a handful of plant species domesticated back then: rice, maize, wheat, millet, potatoes, and barley. No newly significant calorie-providing species have been added to our domesticated lists since then. As with what we call scientific memes, farming started all around the world at a similar time, and it soon became the way that most populations fed and clothed themselves around the world. It really was fast and all-encompassing revolution. In some places on the globe, the farming revolution could not go ahead for a couple of reasons. One was that the area wasn't able to be farmed due to climatic or geographic restrictions. Another reason was that humans could not domesticate the plants and animals of that place. Some plants and some animals are just not able to transition to a life of being herded or planted in strict concordance with the subjugation of humans. Many think that this agricultural revolution was a huge step forward, fueled by the Homo sapiens intellect. People could now control nature instead of living in coexistence with it. The majority of people think that farming was a great step, that it made life easier, that it made less stress, or meant less stress, and more free time and shite like that. It actually produced the opposite outcome. You got dirtier and more diseased. You stayed in one spot in your own filth, just like modern-day gypsies. Hunter-gatherers moved on from the sites that they dirtied. They moved away from their filth. Farmers wallowed in their filth. You got hungrier and gained a greater risk of starvation from farming. Issues arose that if your single crop or small variety of crops failed, that you had no food. You could not replace them with other things because you could not get them from anywhere. You also got much unhealthier due to the lack of variety in your diet. The variety of food sources of a hunter-gatherer's diet gave them a much better spread of nutritional factors. Basically, the monkey went from a much healthier lifestyle and got put into something that in fact was much unhealthier for them. You were fucking tricked into believing it was better for you in lots of ways. What was it made you do it then? Well, you were outclassed mentally by plants. That's how intelligent you really are, you dumb fucks. You were outwitted by wheat. A grass plant domesticated you. This wheat plant, a shitty little weed species grain that you find really hard to digest even after cooking, in a very short amount of time got you to look after it. You now grow it in huge concentrations all across the world. You protect it from disease by producing toxic chemicals to pour on it. You collect shit from the floor to feed it. You actually take the shit of other creatures from the floor and give it to this organism to help it grow. Fucking disgusting in this unhumble werewolf's opinion. You can give thanks now to one of the biggest cunts that ever lived, Fritz Haber, for the method that can fix nitrogen so that a fucking plant can absorb this as inorganic nutrition. This man devised this process to produce ammonia to be needed for explosives in World War I. The Allied powers stopped Germany getting their needed ammonia shipped in as a resource through blockades, so he invented this method so that he could get the Germans the stuff that they needed to continue the war. I mean, this twat got a Nobel Prize for this process in 1918 when he developed it for killing people. This same process is now thought to help feed half the population of the world. If it were not for this inorganic method of producing fixed nitrogen, the crops we require to feed us would not be anywhere near enough to cover the calories needed. This cunt was also the father of chemical warfare. He was the man who weaponized chlorine gas to clear out Allied trenches. He was personally there at the Second Battle of Ypres, I think that's how you say it, as they released the gas towards the Allied lines. They waited for the wind to blow in the right direction, then he was happy to see the clouds of chlorine waft across the battlefield. Once it had reached the trenches, it was drawn into the lungs where it burned, damaged the mucous membranes, causing the lungs to flood with fluid. So the poor bastards who breathed it drowned on their own body fluids. It also burnt the eyes and killed or wounded in the most horrible of ways. He was a nice guy, huh? He, as an added bonus, famously did the maths that worked out that a long-term exposure to a small amount of the poison gas would be as effective in killing large numbers of soldiers as would a large concentration over a short period of time. Ironically, he was a Polish Jew, which meant this Germany-loving man who killed for his country, produced illegal gas weapons that had horrendous effects on people, had to flee from the fatherland eventually, as he was now a hated part of the community. If he had not have left, he would have been killed for his religious beliefs. This proper dickhead who these fucking plants are willing to use to survive and prosper. You weed and water these self-interested bastards, stripping the land of any plant or animal that can compete with them for resources. You have changed the whole courses of rivers to serve them water. The consequence is that wheat has become exceptionally successful. Successful? That is, if we think of a species' success being related to sheer numbers of that organism alive at one time. As a result of wonderful agriculture, you have the maladies that this lifestyle incurs, as you are not evolved to be a farmer. You're not evolved to carry buckets of water or to take rocks out of the ground. Your anatomy is not suitable for ploughing or building fences. Due to agriculture, your backs are wrecked and you suffer from the tasks that you have to undertake. Your body is not really meant to be doing hour after hour of lifting, carrying, bending backs and back-breaking work. So why did you decide to give up your time, rich hunter-gatherer lifestyle, in order to become stressed out farmers with no time and bad backs? Well, it meant you could grow your population massively. A similar sized piece of land could give you so much more return from agriculture than it would from foraging. So farmers could produce more children. That's why agriculture worked so well as your population exploded. We saw the world's population of Homo sapiens increase exponentially as a result of farming. The human plague began. A much more unhappy human was produced, but agriculture allowed many of them. Often these farmers suffered from hunger and paucity of life, but they could be loads more of you miserable bastards. That's when you started to really wreck stuff around you. The environment was really fucked at this point, never mind global tipping points that are pointed at in the 21st century. It was at this point that we saw the world get shafted by a human disease. You grew in numbers and you raped the earth, putting your plant masters wherever they would grow. You destroyed biomes and habitats, replacing them with monocultures of your crops. You burnt the natural vegetation. The ashes were then ploughed into the soil. This would be an initial fertilizer for your lords and masters, but you would need to find fresh ground, as the minerals of the soil would be soon used and the dust would become sterile. The central belt of North America is a monoculture of wheat for hundreds of thousands of miles. Field after field of wheat, billions of individuals of this very evolutionary successful plant. You did not care about the wild species that were already there. In fact, you destroyed them and their homes for your plant overlords. You did this to increase your masters' numbers, which you talk about as increasing yield, a positive thing for you. You had to do this for the wheat in order to let your population grow. Now you spread like a scrophulatic rash across the surface of the earth. You destroy and damage, yet you watch documentaries and support the World Wildlife Fund. What a fucking joke you are. These domesticated species of plant had you in a trap from which you could not extricate yourselves. There was now too many of you to go back to the hunter-gatherer lifestyle. The land could no longer support your large numbers, even if you wanted to go back to the old ways. Hunter-gatherers could and are still able to be found, but they are only really found in areas where there was no alternative to agriculture. The master plants would also allow you to have more children and have them earlier, not seasonally. You could now manage to have them at any time in the year. This would mean that over your lifetime you could have many more children and again increase the human population at a logarithmic rate. You stupid fucking monkeys with your big brains and consciousnesses and stuff were outwitted by grass. Your life was now much more difficult, nastier and shorter, yet you could not do anything about it. The humans would work to improve their lot. You constantly tried changing the methods of farming to increase the yields gained. This led to less free time and more hard back-breaking work. Agriculture meant a lot more mouths to feed. With more mouths to feed, the farmers would have to increase yields to satisfy them. These new mouths were now weaned too early and in turn became competition for resources with each other. This often meant that the populace that required food did not get enough in the way of sound nutrition. As a result, we saw the weakening of the human as a species, reducing the efficacy of their immune system and actually causing a huge percentage rise in the death rate of the farmer in comparison to the hunter-gatherers of old. Oh, don't get me wrong, there are still hunter-gatherers in the world, but these are only rarely really found in areas where cultivation is not possible. Also, with more people and the inability to move if threatened, the farmers would be more prone to violence. With a hunter-gatherer lifestyle, if your big bad neighbours attacked and came into your territory of that moment, you could simply do what you always did and move on. Not so for the farmers. They had to defend their turf, as it were. So you fought more often, and the outcome of those battles was much more significant to your group. If you lost your land, you would probably lose all and be at high risk of starving as a tribe. This was the first advancement, an advancement that caused much more hardship in the long term. Humans became even evolutionary successful if we look at sheer numbers and take them as a measure of success. But in reality, it bred you to be weaker and less content as a species. You became even more pathetic as a bitch to the grass. So, yeah, you see. And now I'll go on to my next interview, which will talk about animals.